Hey, I'm Dave, and you're listening to another episode of Dying to Listen podcast presented by the Disc Golf Dyers Guild. Today we have Justin from Dyenamic Dyes. So, get ready for an awesome time. Let's jump in and get started. So, hey Justin, thank you for joining us on this podcast. So we'll just dive right in.
Yeah.
Do you play disc golf?
I do, yeah. So it was kind of I guess I'm one of those COVID disc golfers, if you will. So buddies of mine had been playing for a few years. It was my 40th birthday. I'm going to age myself there, I guess. A couple of years ago, over COVID, was my 40th birthday. So buddies of mine were talking about, oh, you need to get into disc golf. It's really fun. You know, we always used to like throwing the regular frisbee around, go to the park, have cookouts or whatever. And they're like, oh, you'll love it. You'll love it. And I'm like, okay, let's try it out. So we literally were at a friend of mine puts on this huge car show in Ohio every year. And it was, we were out there after the car show, and a friend of mine had discs in his trunk. And he's like, just grab some, just throw them out here in the field. They feel way different than frisbees. Like, you're not going to believe it. And he was right. And I tried to throw it like a frisbee. It does not work that way. There's a definite learning curve to it. So, but it was great. It was great getting into it. And I like playing a lot. I just don't get to play as much as I would like to, which I feel like is a lot of us. We don't get to play as much as we would like to.
So where are you located?
So I am in a suburb of Cincinnati, Ohio. About 20 minutes south would get me in directly downtown Cincinnati. So I'm like, it's a town called Blue Ash. It's a very small community. There's only a handful of traffic lights. It's that kind of small town, but it's nice. We like it. It's quiet, which is our scene. So we're good with it. But yeah, love it here.
Do you play during the winter at all?
I've gotten out for like a couple of rounds in the winter. I literally just did a tournament last Saturday. It's one that's put on every year. I think they've done it 8 years, but I've only played obviously the last couple, being I just started playing a few years ago. But it's called Cousin Eddie's disc golf tournament, and it's the theme based on the Christmas Vacation movie. So it's really neat. They do a manufactured disc gift from Cousin Eddie. So the person that puts it on, the tournament director, gets with the manufacturer, and they do like a 3-pack of discs that are your gift from Cousin Eddie, and those are the only 3 discs you're allowed to use for the whole tournament. So it's different because you're throwing things that you might not be familiar with, which was definitely the case the first year I did it. It was Gateway discs, and I don't even think I had heard of Gateway discs at that time, to be honest. I didn't do terribly that year. Their discs were not bad. I was not mad at them. This year we did Trilogy, which was cool. They were all misprints, but at the same time, I love a good misprint. And I got 2 molds that I actually bagged, so that worked out pretty well. So I had some discs that I was familiar with. But it was fun. It was fun. It was very cold, though.
The weather doesn't really stop me from playing unless it's like -20 and windy.
That was the problem. It was very windy.
Yeah.
It was projected originally to be like 50 degrees, which we were like, oh my gosh, it's December in Ohio. It's going to be 50 degrees. What is happening? But it was very, very windy, and the wind chill ended up making it feel like 30 all day, which was less than pleasant, but it was tolerable, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, once you start getting moving around, it's not as bad, but
yeah. It's true. The problem was not having our own bags full of discs to choose for the weather.
Yeah.
So there were some very lightweight, understable molds mixed in, like some diamonds, which are incredibly lightweight, understable discs from Latitude 64. And I love the disc, don't get me wrong, but definitely not when there's 20-mile-an-hour wind gusts coming at me.
Yeah, well, it's a story that you can tell. So that's awesome that you started playing disc golf recently. What got you into disc dyeing then?
So one of the same 2 friends that got me into playing actually got me into dyeing as well. And it was initially just one of the things where I saw a disc that he had dyed of his own. And I just got curious because I was, wondering how he was able to put a design on the disc. I was thinking, did he color it with Sharpies? I didn't really know what he did. So just kind of asked him, and he kind of explained how he started out using shaving cream beds and RIT dye. So I, of course, then I had to try. So I, had a couple of discs that I just wanted to see what would happen. And I started with the shaving cream and RIT dye. Not a very good experiment with my first one as far as the result. I actually still have the disc that I did for that, and it's hanging in my my studio / lab area. That is the spare bathroom behind me. Actually, is where that happens. But yeah, it's not a pretty disc. I'll just leave it at that. But it's inspiration. That's how I look at it now.
Absolutely. I'm surprised that I'm finding out a lot of people actually have their first disc that they're dyed. And I was sneaking on your Instagram, and I think I did see that disc.
It's very likely. I think it's one of the first, maybe second, one of the first couple of posts that I did. It's like a green, a lime green fusion. I think it was a Defender. No, it's not a Defender. Enforcer. That's what it is. But yeah, it's not pretty. It's gotten worse too, because it's a couple of years old at this point.
Well, it seems like you've definitely progressed very well and very fast. So good on that.
Thank you.
Do you remember your second disc or discs after that you dyed?
So I did experiment with the less expensive plastics just out of curiosity as well. So I think I had a prime judge and a prime deputy that I had gotten, they're cheaper discs. So I tried the shaving cream method with them. There was zero result because it was prime plastic. So it did not work, which obviously told me that was not going to be something I could utilize for a method for those discs. And then I learned that you couldn't actually even dye that plastic very well or very easily. I think there's a way to kind of get some dye to take on it now with some of the different things that I've learned across trying different methods. But I have no preference as far as, or I have no desire, I should say, to dye prime or any base plastic. It just doesn't look great afterwards, and it's not going to keep. It's going to be there for a month, and then it's going to be gone. It's basically how I look at it.
Where did you learn most of your information for disc dyeing? Where did you absorb all this stuff from?
My buddy, I didn't mention his name. Oh my gosh, I feel so bad. Birdie Bud Dyes, Travis, my dude. We actually been friends for a very, very long time, over a decade. And he is just somebody that I bounced ideas off of. So I would try something, and then I would say, send him a text or talk to him the next time we saw each other, whatever it was. Just kind of ask him, hey, here's what happened. I tried this. I got a, weird result or no result at all, basically. What's, potentially my issue? And to have somebody to kind of bounce ideas off of, he was still fairly new to dyeing discs at that time as well. And his progression with different dye mediums kind of steered me in progressing with different dye mediums as well. So that helped. And then also, like everyone else looking up YouTube videos, at the time there really wasn't a whole lot out there that I could really find value in. There was a few that I saw that were really kind of amusing. Someone literally put a disc in a plastic bag full of dye and then set it out in front of their house in the sun. So I obviously just Googled how to dye a disc, and that was one of the first videos that popped up. And the guy literally filled this bag full of dye and stuck his whole disc in there. So he just dyed the whole thing. There was no, I just want the front, or I want to tape off this half and mask this part off. No, it was just the whole thing. And he let it sit out in the sun for a few hours and pulled it out. Sure enough, it took the dye. I don't know how well it kept or how long, but that was not a method that I wanted to try. So I found other videos, and thankfully the Differences doing it was introduced to me. Bobby put together some fantastic tutorials. At the time, the library was very small. There were a handful of videos at that time, and now that's an immense library that has guest dyers on it even. So it's pretty cool to see how his site has evolved, and it's become a very, very elaborate encyclopedia, if you will, of how to dye, because the way it's set up, it's you want to find out how to do spin dyes, okay, there's a whole section on that. Like it's really, really cool that's part of our community and that everybody has access to it. It's really cool. But that's kind of where I learned, was just a couple of random videos. And then once I found Bobby's site, I just, went from there, and then trial and error on a bunch of things on my own just to see if I could get something to work differently was kind of how things happened.
That's awesome. Yeah. Bobby, I considered him the godfather of disc dyeing education.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen one of his videos, are you really a disc dyer?
Exactly. It makes you wonder. Or if you don't know who he is, like you definitely need to look him up. He's got a lot of great content.
And that's awesome that you actually had a buddy to help you with the disc dyeing, because I feel like a lot of people are kind of doing it by themselves and don't really have anybody that they can lean on or bounce ideas off. And, that's awesome that you had that, and pretty sure it helped you.
Definitely. Yeah. He's experimented with a lot of the mediums that I've used. There's one that he uses now that I do not use. And anybody that taps me on the shoulder or drops in my DMs about a cell dye or a Floetrol type dye, I send them his way. It's not a medium that I have any interest in trying to learn. I feel like I wouldn't rule it out entirely that I won't dabble with it in some point in my life, but at this point, it's not something that I'm interested in trying to figure out. So I would much rather send someone to an experienced dyer with that method to get a fantastic result, as opposed to me giving them the old, oh, sure, send me your disc and I'll try not to screw it up kind of situation. So, he's great. He's kind of flipping back and forth. He does some Floetrol and some clear glue beds, but I'm like 100% clear glue beds now is where I'm locked in.
What dye methods have you all tried with or experimented with?
So I started, like I said, shaving cream and RIT dye, and that experiment was, I think, just odd because I had to kind of mix the shaving cream with the RIT in separate cups so that I could get multiple colors and then kind of layer those colors on the shaving cream bed that was in the pan. So it was very difficult to kind of make a pattern out of that, which is why, if, like you said, you scrolled through my feed and saw the original disc, it's just kind of some random droplets. I literally spooned the colored shaving cream on top of the shaving cream bed and tried to position it where I thought it was going to look kind of neat afterwards. The bed actually looked really cool. I don't know if there's a picture of the bed on that particular post or not, but I do have a picture of that dye bed. Maybe I'll put it in my Instagram story or something at some point to do like a throwback to where it all began or something like that. But the bed actually looks really cool, and then the disc does not look that cool. So I did a few shaving cream beds that I was, not really that pleased with. I asked Travis what his results were looking, or why he was getting the results he was getting, because I saw some of the stuff that he was putting out and it was a lot more vibrant. He was steering me to some Dollar Tree shampoo and conditioner to do shampoo and conditioner beds. I know a lot of people do lotion. Same kind of situation. A little bit different consistency with the, I guess, the level of fluid that's really involved. There's some more liquid form involved with some of that. I think lotion's a little stiffer. Maybe gives you some more control. I tried lotion beds also. And then eventually, even though I don't want to say I was scared to try it, but I was steered away from it just because of the nightmare of cleanup, is what I was told is why I should stay away from clear glue. I don't want to do glue beds because the cleanup is a mess. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I probably don't want to mess with that. I live in an apartment. I don't want to screw up my sink. Like, it's not like I have a stainless steel sink in my bathroom that I can just go to town in. It's a white porcelain sink that's going to just absorb everything. So I was trying to avoid that, just to avoid the cleanup part. And then my wife was like, it's funny because she's been really supportive, which is really kind of cool to have somebody by your side to just say, you know what, you should just try it. Just do it. I mean, it's an apartment. It's not ours. Like, it's not like you're going to damage something we own if, they keep our deposit, whatever. So, yeah, she got me into try the glue, and was probably the best dye transition decision as far as a medium that I could have made. I feel like it just opened up a ton of new avenues for me to explore. The control that I have with the design, it's just it's so much easier to make the dye go where I want it to go with different tools to use to make it so like straw to blow the dye in certain directions, or toothpicks to make certain patterns happen. It's been the most forgiving dye medium that I've used, and I think that's why I'm so comfortable with it. And the results are fantastic as far as some of the stuff that I've seen many other dyers put out, and then also some of the stuff that I've put out. It's not difficult to put out a fantastic result with a clear glue bed. So I'm locked in with that method now, but I did have those trials and errors along the way.
Yeah, the stuff that I've been seeing so far is pretty damn cool.
Thanks.
I also saw that you do some stencils too. Yeah,
I do, and that's probably going to get more regular. I'm going to have some more regularity with that. So I had when COVID hit, my wife decided that she wanted to do some crafting. I mean, everybody was locked in. Nobody could go anywhere. Nobody could do anything. So we're like, well, what are we going to do? Like, we could read books. Okay, that's great. But, what can we do that's a little more active than sitting and reading a book? So we bought a Cricut, and it became like our little kind of go-to hobby type thing. So there was a number of little projects that she wanted to do. And then once I started dyeing, I was like, you know what? I could actually use this to make some designs to put on the discs. And I think in my third or fourth post on my feed, there's a block O, because yes, I'm an Ohio State fan, because I'm in Ohio. Imagine that. So go Bucks. But yeah, the block O was, I think, the first stencil that I did. The result was less than ideal just because of I used a shaving cream bed for it, so it wasn't like I was doing what I'm doing now. So the dye didn't pop. I actually still have that disc too, because I dyed it for myself. But I did that one. And the stencil game just kind of, a couple of buddies are, oh, can you put this on a disc? Can you put that on it? Sure. And then I decided to do some different dye series with the stencils, and I have those saved in my Instagram as highlights. To kind of be able to visit those whenever I want to, and then also for other people to see how the particular series has come along, where it started, how it's been going. And the the Harp series was the first one that I did. That stencil was just really cool. I literally just typed in my image search for my software that I use. Cricut software is actually pretty versatile, but I literally just typed in a search for Harp, and one of the first images I saw reminded me a lot of a beer that I like to drink. I do like Guinness beer. The Harp
Nice.
is very similar looking to the Guinness Harp. It's almost identical. It kind of freaked me out a little bit. It doesn't have their little established whatever year. I don't know what year they were established, but it doesn't have that on there. So it's technically not their Harp. But either way, the Harp series was the first one that I did, and it was really cool because that's where I think made a bit of a name for myself in the disc golf world.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember seeing that. I'm like, wow, that is really cool. I'll let you continue, but I do have some questions on that style.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Do you want to go with your questions, or you want me to just keep rolling?
Sure. The question I have is, what stuck out to me was you had two beds, basically.
Yeah.
How the hell do you do that?
Yeah, so the first, I want to say, I don't even remember how many I've done now. I think I'm at 25 or 26. I actually numbered this series as I posted them. Yeah, I literally outlined, and I think I named all of them too. I think they all have some sort of clever name that tied into their whatever thing inspired me to use the color patterns that I used at the time. Just something to tie into how it looks. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the way that it initially started, I ended up with some tournament plastic blank harps that were bottom stamped with the Westside logo. And that was where it all started. I think I started with 6 of them. And it was the first blank plastic that I had, period, to dye. So I was like, what the heck do I do with this? Then I was like, okay, it's called a harp. Let's put a harp on it. Why not? Well, when I peeled, this is where it gets funny. So weeding the stencil, I ended up using, so I had the stencil cut and I've got it on the vinyl mat, and I'm laying the transfer tape over top of it because I hadn't really messed a whole lot with stencils at that point yet. And as I'm peeling up the transfer tape, it's pulling literally like the entire harp image off onto the transfer tape, which is exactly what I wanted it to do. So I was like, okay, great. So then I put that on the disc, centered it my generic way. I won't go into that yet because that's not fun. But I centered it my own way, and I had my bed. I created the bed, and then I laid it down and did my normal 24-hour sit, and just pulled it the next day, peeled the vinyl, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually really cool. What am I going to do with this leftover vinyl that's still here, that's shaped exactly like the opposite part of what I just dyed? So I literally just took the transfer tape, pulled that part of the vinyl off, and laid it over top of the existing dye. So it was already dyed once, and then when I laid that vinyl over there, it blocked everything that was dyed, and then the masked area from before was now exposed for the dye. So then I would re-dye it, basically. It would just go down a second time in whatever dye bed I concocted at the time to kind of accent those colors. And the first result was honestly, I'm not somebody that likes to brag, but I was impressed like beyond my expectations for sure, as far as how well it looked. And as soon as I posted a picture of it, literally like 2 minutes after I posted it online, a guy messaged me and was, I have to have that. And I was like,
nice.
All right, cool. I mean, I had been selling dyes at the time, so it's not like it was unusual for me to get messages about people wanting to buy, but so when it happened that fast, I was like, I might be onto something here. So I just kind of kept rolling with it, with those particular stencils, with that method. Basically a double dye with opposite stencils to create the two colors, to kind of offset each other a little bit in some cases. And in a couple of them, I blended them a little bit more. So they, looked a little bit kind of like a hidden harp almost, if you will, with some of them, the way they transitioned. So I had a lot of fun with it. Still having fun with it. I actually still have a couple of blanks in my arsenal to drop in later on down the road. I'm holding on to them. We'll see when I want to bring the harp series back. But yeah, that's the series it started with. That's where the stencils started, and I'm having fun with it.
That's awesome. I do have, I think, 5 blank harps if you'd like to buy them.
We may need to hook that up. Yes. That is very likely.
So I figured that's how you did that method. What I found was impressive is you aligning the second stencil pretty damn perfectly, because I don't see any, thin lines or any type of weird bleeds that you misaligned it. So nice job on that.
Thanks. So I will credit that to my vision, because I literally eyeball everything. I have no laser hanging from the ceiling or special marking of some sort on my turntable or anything like that. It's literally, I do have like a light board. So, I mean, that helps now, but I didn't have a light board back then. I just got the light board like a month ago. So anything that's dyed before, November 1st of this year has been without a light board. But it's all just been eyeballed. And I found it easier to lay the stencil face down, sticky side up on a flat surface, and then put the disc over top of the stencil to eyeball it that way for myself. Specifically with the light board, I feel like that works way better with the light board. But before the light board, I kind of just played it by ear with whichever disc I had. So like with the blank harps, they're fairly transparent, so a lot of times that method worked pretty well. It became more challenging when I had already done the first dye, though. So that took a little bit more time to line those up. But yeah, there's probably, if you look really closely, there's some imperfections here and there with some of the spacing, but for the most part, they're all pretty well lined up. But thank you for calling that out. That's good.
Yeah, no, I tried masking a stencil with like what you do, and it's difficult to get everything lined up, especially more so on domier discs. And if the stencil is larger, that's also a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Can you explain how you apply the second masking vinyl?
With the, I'll use the Harp as an example because the stencil itself is actually a pretty basic stencil. So it's got the initial dye of it. I usually would do the Harp part of the dye first. So I'll pull it, and then the actual dyed part of the disc will be the Harp that's already dyed. So then I have less vinyl to lay on the second time, because the first time I put the regular one on was where most of it was being masked and only the Harp was left exposed. So for the second time, it was a little easier to mask just the Harp because there's not as many pieces of vinyl involved, which I think helped quite a bit. And if anybody's going to attempt to do a double vinyl dye like that, where you want to try and experiment, I would highly encourage you to do the same thing. Use the larger part of the vinyl masking on the first dip, and then for your re-dye, you'll have less vinyl to apply so that it won't necessarily be as difficult for you to potentially line it up. But yeah, it was all still done, just by me looking at it and lining it up, with no, assistance from laser guided anything. But yeah, that was the easier part, was using the smaller part of the vinyl second.
Yeah, I know you mentioned it, but do you still do the vinyl on the table and you lay the disc on there, or do you do it the opposite way for that masking?
For the second masking, it would be disc laying down face up, and then me laying the vinyl over top of it. It was just way easier to eyeball the areas that needed to be covered that way. Mm-hmm. Especially because part of the disc is already dyed. It's not going to be as transparent. Even with the light board, it's not going to be as easy to see through. So it was definitely disc laying face up and lay the vinyl over top.
And I'm assuming you use clear transfer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The first time I tried to mask a design, I tried a technique that the automotive people do when they wrap vinyl. Is they add the soapy water so it doesn't tack right away, and you try to squeegee it out. It worked, but I think I might have used too much water for there, and took forever for the water to get out and dry, but that was one method I tried.
I haven't tried that. I don't know that I will. I don't, nothing against your experiments at all, but I don't know that I'll try that. I think I'll leave that to the auto vinyl folks to use that method. But I actually was curious with some of the, I think it's not hot dip, but there's like is it called Plasti dip? Where they have like this, it's like a basin of water, and then there's this pattern that's laying over the water. Is that what that's called?
Hydro dip.
Hydro dip. Yes, I knew that. Why did I not know that? Edit that out. No, I'm kidding. So hydro dipping, though, like some of the stuff that I see them put in the hydro dip, like items that they put in there, like why are you hydro dipping that? And then they pull it out and I'm like, that's why. Why can't I do that with a disc? Because I don't have the equipment. That's why. The equipment's going to be insane, and I don't have a garage. I live in an apartment. Yeah. So that's not happening.
Again, great job on the Harp series, because that's the first thing that I've known you from. So good job on that.
Thank you.
So your preferred dye method is the glue bed. Can you explain your process briefly of how you do that from start to finish?
Yeah, sure. The common basin that I use is just a 9-inch pie pan. As far as where the glue gets poured into, I use Michael's brand or Michael's Craft Store. I don't think it's called Michael's brand, but it's like their generic clear glue. It's like $13.99 a gallon or something like that. It's $7 cheaper than Elmer's if anybody wants to try and save $1 or $2. I feel like it works. It's a little bit more liquid. I feel like there's a little bit more flow to it. Elmer's feels a little bit stiffer. And I started with Elmer's. I used it for a lot of my dyes for a long time until I realized that there was an alternative that was a little less money. I think the main problem was not using it as soon was because it wasn't available. Michael's was out of stock on it forever. I don't know what supply issue they had. It was something related to COVID, obviously. But yeah, they had some supply chain issues with getting it in stock, but they finally have had it readily available for me now. And that's the glue that I prefer to use. So I'll pour that in the pie pan. I want to say about a third of the pie pan depth is how much glue I put in. Some people use more, some people use less. I think that that's a pretty decent amount. That way, if it's a domier disc, I don't have to worry about it bottoming out or anything. It's enough give. But yeah, I'll pour that in, and then I use Pro Chemical and dye mixed with acetone for my dye, and I will just take whatever colors I feel like are, the right colors for that disc, or if it's somebody's request, whatever colors they asked me to put in, and make the pattern however I see fit at the time. I usually go into it with no real idea of what I'm going to do. I just walk up to it and start dropping dye, see where it falls, and then either swirl it around with a toothpick or blow it around with a straw. Or I've even gotten into a new method that I'm using that I'm really liking. I'm using what I'm calling centrifugal force. I don't know if that's what I'm actually supposed to be calling it, because it's not like I'm putting a ton of centrifugal force on it. Let's be real. I'm literally spinning the pan in a circle a bunch of times just to see how the motion of that spin makes the dye move on the glue. And some of my more recent posts on Instagram and Facebook are results of that. The Supreme Escapes that I've posted the last couple of weeks are, they're very interesting. It's weird to see how it's like this weird webbing, or I don't want to call them cells because it's not as defined as an actual like Floetrol cell dye, but there's pieces of it that I can see where it almost looks like it wants to form a cell. It's just very interesting, and it's kind of cool because as much control as I like to have with the pattern that I make sometimes, this is getting me a little bit more free with the design aspect. So not really knowing what that result is going to be is kind of cool. Like I can see what it looks like in the dye bed, obviously, before I put the disc down. If I don't like it, I'm not going to send it. But most of them I have liked. So, but yeah, it's that's usually what it is. I just do that and then let the disc set for 24 hours, no heat. I've never used heat, have no desire to use heat. I was curious about dehydrators because I've seen a lot of people using those. I just feel like heat lamps just create potential fire hazards that I don't necessarily need in my apartment. My neighbors probably would appreciate me not experimenting with heat, so I'll keep it my 24-hour method. I have no problem waiting. It's kind of nice actually. I just drop a few discs in the morning when I before I log into work, since I work from home, and then get to pull them the next morning when I wake up before I log in and see what the results are. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm impatient. Nuke the thing with heat. I want half it's done.
It happens. I mean, some people are.
What dye mixture do you use for your dye that you use in the glue beds?
The acetone, Pro Chemical and dye. So I will put the Pro Chemical and dye. I measure it out. I want to say I use I don't have like an exact measurement. I just kind of put in. I use 1/8 of a teaspoon to actually fish it out of the container to put it in to the dropper. But I end up putting in a couple of scoops with that. And then sometimes they're full scoops, sometimes they're not. It just kind of depends on the color. I feel like some of the colors you benefit by putting a little bit more of the dye powder in versus some of the others that are a little bit more potent. You don't necessarily need that much. But I do add a little bit of hot water before I add the acetone. I just kind of do that and let it sit for a couple of minutes, give it time to kind of activate the dye. I didn't always do that. That was a tip that I picked up, I want to say just a couple of months ago. I will say it was an immediate impact to the color vibrancy on my neon colors specifically. The other colors, there was definitely improvement, but the neons, it was like, holy cow, this is what these colors are supposed to look like. Okay, now I don't feel bad that I spent, $8 for a 1 ounce jar or whatever the prices were. It's like, it's really nice to see that result by adding that hot water and just kind of letting it sit. So that's pretty much it. I'll just fill, it's got I have 2 ounce droppers, is what they're, designed to hold. So I just fill the rest with acetone, up to, I leave some space at the top because I obviously don't want it to overflow when I put the dropper back in. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
So the containers that you house it in is like those glass jars with the droppers built in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I just got them on Amazon, like a 24 pack or something for, I don't even remember, $10, $12, whatever it was. But yeah, it's just the generic droppers, 2 ounce droppers from Amazon.
Yeah, I have that, but I've been noticing that I haven't been dyeing a whole lot, and I've noticed that they've been evaporating.
It makes a difference. If you're not using them, I feel like I know they're supposed to be airtight with the way that those droppers are designed, but it goes back to you get what you pay for. Obviously, spending, $10, $15 on a 24 pack of them on Amazon, you're not getting the greatest quality thing out there. But yeah, I've noticed that with a couple of the colors that I don't use as frequently. I'll go back to them and I'm like, I feel like I should have more in here. What is happening? So it'll just get topped off with acetone. Thankfully, it's usually like 4 or 5 of them at a time that I notice that, so I can just kind of top them all off at once.
So I'm curious, for the Michaels glue, are you mainly using that just for the affordability, or do you actually like the consistency of that? Because I know a lot of people like Elmer's glue because they say the consistency from batch to batch is similar. And the other stuff that they tried were inconsistent. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I like both. And I will say, initially, the reason that I started using the Michaels craft glue is because it was cheaper. I was still kind of learning about the glue dye method and kind of experimenting, and at the time didn't really have a ton of sales. I mean, I had sold several discs, but it's just like, it was just essentially the money that I make from selling discs. I literally just buy more discs. That's what I do. I don't, I don't have some Lamborghini that I parked in the garage that I bought with disc dyeing money. Let's be real. It's not that lucrative of a business. So It's totally fun. Love the art aspect of it. And every artist needs to save where they can. So the glue was the way that I could save $6-7 at a time for the gallons. And I had also at that time not really learned how to repurpose and reuse a glue bed. So I was, when I first started with glue, was using Elmer's, and I was dumping a bed after I was done using it because I didn't really know how to reuse it, for one, without like still getting some of the colors from the previous bed involved. And I have since thankfully watched a lot more videos and talked to a lot more dyers that have some excellent practices on repurposing glue, reducing waste as far as that is concerned as well. So I can probably get 5 or 6 good dyes out of a glue bed before I have to dump and replace with new glue or just add glue to it. I found that that's actually a pretty decent trick too, because it separates and pours in clear, and then the dye that was there before just kind of moves out of the way and you get a bit of a clear canvas. It just kind of creates this orbit on the outside edge of the pan, basically, for you to kind of be mindful of as you drop your new colors. But yeah, the Michaels glue consistency, I like it. I like it is, like I said, a little bit more fluid. I like that consistency though. I feel like there's a bit more freedom in where the dye can go, and I'm not a control freak. I do like to try to make a design look how I want it to look, but at the same time, I don't mind kind of letting things happen naturally as well. Like if it's gonna, make something really spectacular happen, then maybe I don't need to be as in control of it. Maybe something really neat's gonna happen. So I've learned to be aware of that, being that it's a bit more fluid than the Elmer's glue, and that's perfectly fine with me. I think it's a great medium. The same exact result as far as color saturation. I've seen no difference in any of that aspect of it. It's just a matter of getting used to it being a bit more fluid than the Elmer's glue. if you can get used to that, I highly recommend it.
I might have to go buy me some now. Do you buy locally or do you get it online?
So I actually have a Michael's craft store. I live right between two of them, actually. If I drive 10 minutes one direction, I'm at one. If I drive 20 minutes the other direction, I'm at one.
That sounds dangerous.
Yeah. That's being in the outskirts of Cincinnati. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Kings Island Amusement Park. It's like Paramount. Well, it used to be Paramount. I don't think it's Paramount anymore. Cedar Point, Cedar Fair owns it. One of the big amusement parks in Ohio. I'm right between downtown Cincinnati and Kings Island Amusement Park. So there's a ton of stores, malls, all kinds of stuff all around me. So finding things locally is not difficult a lot of times. But yeah, I can go down the street, pick up a gallon, or they have like a 4-pack online. That's like, I want to say it's like $42, something like that. So it ends up being just over $10 a gallon, which is kind of cool. So I ordered one of those from them online. I will not do that again. There was no packaging at all in this box with just 4 gallons of glue banging against each other on their transport over here from wherever they came from. And
oh boy,
one of them was definitely leaking and was not a full gallon after I got it cleaned up. Just leave it at that.
Yeah, it's kind of iffy shipping that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you explain how you reuse your glue beds or glue?
Yeah, so this is where it gets kind of interesting, at least interesting to me. So I initially was using, back when I started with like shaving cream and the shampoo and conditioner mixture and those mediums, I didn't have 9-inch pie pans at that time. I was using $5 toy kid Frisbees from Target that are much larger than any Discraft regular Ultimate Frisbee you've ever seen in your life. They're huge. So what I've done now is I actually have I have 3 of them. I have one of those Frisbees and then a paper towel, just a standard paper towel laying inside that Frisbee, and then the pie pan on top of that paper towel. So it kind of works like a tray, essentially is what it is now. And since the Frisbees are larger than the pie pan, I can actually stack them and it seals so no air is getting in the glue to dry it out, as opposed to what I've seen a lot of other people do is they're having to dump it with a funnel into another gallon container and repurpose it that way. Thankfully, I'm not having to do that because I live in an apartment. I don't want to. That was one of those cleanup things I was fearing. Was like, oh shoot, now I'm going to dump dyed glue everywhere. This is going to be great. So yeah, the repurposing of it works that way. So that kind of works like a seal for that pan, like a lid basically. And I stack them, and then I have a 4th pie pan that I don't. That's what I use for my hot dips. I just have it sitting around because I don't do a lot of hot dips. But that I flip over and then I lay on top of the stack so that it seals the top one. So that they're all just kind of sitting there ready for me to use. Like if I'm going to be, if I have to go into the office for a couple of days or whatever, I'm not going to be able to put any dyes down. I don't want them to dry out. That's how I'll stack them and I can repurpose them. But I've gotten, I think 5 or 6 dyes out of each pan that way the last several months now. So it's definitely going to be the way that I keep doing it.
So have you noticed any residue dye on the other discs that you dye in that bed, and or how do you mitigate that issue?
So I pour dye very heavily. I drop a ton of dye in the dye bed. I feel like for me personally, I get better saturation that way. And maybe that's because I'm not using heat. I feel like it helps because I'm not using heat. But because I do that, when I'm reusing a dye bed, obviously you've got other dyes that are mixed in, especially if you're on your 3rd or 4th pull, you've got, 10 potential different colors that have blended together and it's just a brown glue sitting there now. So you don't know what the heck kind of colors are sitting there that might come through on the disc. So I've found that the heavier I pour or drop the dye, the less likely I am to see or notice if something residual from a previous dye bed were to carry over. I've seen it with a couple of different dyes that I've done. Thankfully, they've been for just like stock purposes, where I'm just dyeing something so that I have something to post online and sell, or something for myself, or something for a friend that I can just, oh shoot, that didn't come out right, I'll just re-dye it. So I've done that a bunch of times. It never hurts to re-dye a disc. You might not get the same exact pattern over top of what you already had, but some of them I've done that way have been really, really cool. So
after you pull a disc, do you do anything with the glue bed, or you just literally add more dye on top of it and send another disc?
Literally add more dye on top of it and send it. I'll make sure usually when you pull a disc, you'll get air bubbles that'll be residual in the bed. So I'll pop those, shake the pan around, bring them to the top, and I usually just poke them all with a toothpick. I don't have some, fancy torch or anything. I hear a bunch of people talking about torching things. I'm not trying to burn an apartment building down. So there are no torches in my dye lab. It is literally me poking holes, or poking the bubble holes as I see them come up. I'll either send another disc right away, or if it's one of those days where I know I'm not going to have time to put together another dye bed, not that it takes that long to do, but I'll just start stacking them and leave them in storage, my little stacked way, until I can get back to them to the next day or the day after.
So I feel like you don't want to start your apartment on fire, but it's okay if you destroy it with dye.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, because I'm only destroying. So if I destroy it with dye, I'm only destroying things that my deposit is responsible for, and potentially impacting my personal belongings with that. If I destroy it with fire, then that's got a number of other folks involved that I really don't want to have to worry about. So I don't want that on my conscience, man.
I don't blame you for that.
Yeah.
What is your must-have dye accessory?
I would have to say my trays. With what I've just started to do with my quote-unquote centrifugal force style that I've been experimenting with, that whole tray with the paper towel underneath that pan, it literally just serves as like a slippery kind of, almost like a lazy Susan, if you will, that's kind of built in with just a paper towel instead of an actual lazy Susan. So I would say that the trays are going to be something that I can't live without. The trays and the pie pans. I gotta have those two things. Otherwise, what am I going to set my discs in?
I mean, that makes perfect sense. Question for you: have you had any issues with larger diameter bid ranges not fitting in the 9-inch pie pans?
I think the closest one that I ended up having to pour more dye. Or more glue into the pie pan to get the surface high enough for this disc. It was a Discmania Mutant, it was a lot bigger of a mid-range than any that I had ever had or seen when I got it from the local shop, local-ish shop. It was, I sat it on my my disc rack when I got home, and it stuck out so much more than the rest of them. I was kind of like, is it really that much bigger? Okay, that's odd. And then when I go to dye it, I'm like, this isn't going to fit the right way. So I ended up just basically having to pour more glue into it to create the surface that I needed to be higher. But other than that, I haven't run into any discs that haven't fit in the 9-inch pie pan. So I'm liking them.
Yeah, at least, well, you checked beforehand. I had a disc that was, bigger in diameter than a pie pan, and I sent it, and like only part of the disc got in there. I'm like, damn it.
So what did you do to fix it?
I think that was one of the discs that I either pulled out, looked at it, was like, whatever, send it, and pushed it harder.
There you go.
Or I took it out and cleaned it. But I think it was the one that I took it out, like, whatever, and send it, and it was perfectly fine. It just pushed really hard. So
yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't want to say I checked it, but I noticed how much bigger it was compared to the other discs. So that's what I just like. I was like, I'm just going to pour more glue into this just because I feel like it's probably going to be difficult to get down as far as I usually have my glue level set. So I didn't physically like put it in beforehand to see if it was going to fit. But yeah, I would say that was a shockingly large disc compared to the other discs that I have had in my possession.
So speaking of discs, what plastic and or discs do you like to dye?
So I really enjoy dyeing a lot of trilogy molds. Majority of my feed is going to showcase a lot of that. And I will say there's a few that everyone else says Castoplast. Obviously, I love dyeing Castoplast. Their plastic's fantastic. I rhymed and I didn't mean to, but you know, it happens. So Castoplast is great. K1, not so much with soft. I'll do soft every now and then, but it just fades quickly. And then another brand that I've found to have some fantastic dye results with is Loft Discs. It's a very small company. They only have three molds right now. The hydrogen putter, the silicone, I don't know how they pronounce it, mid-range, which is new, and then the boreum driver, which is the most strange disc you will ever hold in your hand. If you haven't yet, I encourage you to try to find one just because it's such a strange disc. But their plastic, the A solid plastic from them it's gold. It's literally gold standard of dye. It just pops. Everything I've put down on their stuff it just looks fantastic. But yeah, primarily you'll look at my feed, you'll see Lat 64, Dynamic Discs, West Side. It's primarily trilogy, and that's a lot of that's because that's primarily what my bag is. So I throw the molds, I'm familiar with them. So I feel like if someone has a question about it, in the regards to how well it's going to potentially fly for them, I might be able to add some insight to that aspect. But usually it's just, oh my gosh, that looks so cool, I want to buy it. But yeah, that's usually what I go for. And I think trilogy premium plastic, everybody's pretty familiar with their premium plastics, but I'd say out of the three of those trilogy brands, the Royal Line plastic from Lat 64 is gold, right up there with a solid plastic from Loft Discs, and then this new Supreme plastic from Dynamic it's literally the same thing as the Royal plastic. I mean, let's be real, they're the same company, so it looks so good. It really just it makes such a huge difference to have great plastic to make the dyes pop that much more. So I'm locked in on those. That was another reason I chose two of those other series that I have with the Wings of Grace series on the Lat 64 Graces, and then I did a Roaring Rive series for Silver Lat's the Royal Rive disc that he had with his lion stamp. I thought that was really cool, so I did an adjustment on a stencil for that one, and he loved it. Like he's commented on it, sent me messages and stuff. I've got a couple of autographed discs from him and Kristen hanging behind me on my wall, which if I slide that way, you can see them. There you go. The bottom two closest to my head. So yeah, they're good people. They're really good people.
How did you come up with your disc dyeing business name?
This is a long story, but I'll keep it to the short version. So, being I was introduced to disc golf with buddies of mine, they were familiar with Trilogy Plastic, and one of the first brands that they handed to me to throw was a Dynamic Discs. I think it was a Bounty, actually. It was shortly after the Trilogy Challenge that year that they did, where they had a Bounty as the mid-range for that year in 2020. And it was the first disc that I threw, and it was a Dynamic Disc Bounty. So I said, well, I mean, a lot of people are familiar with Dynamic Discs. It's a pretty big name in the industry. Let's put a spin on it and do my own version of their word dynamic, which is actually also my word dynamic, because my previous additional job was a disc jockey, and my disc jockeys, my company name for that was Dynamic DJs, but it was spelled like the regular way for the word dynamic. So I just kind of took a spin off of what I was already familiar with from my previous company and added the E to make it Dyenamic Dyes, and that's they loved it. It was interesting when I posted on Instagram. I tagged them just because I was like, oh, maybe I'll tag them, see what they say. they shared it to their story online. I had their social media manager messaging me like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool!" Like it was just really cool to kind of get the recognition of it and to know that they were okay with it. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to keep that and I'm going to save that just in case something comes down the line. Like we're going to have a record that your social media manager said this was really awesome. So
yes, it's not copyright infringement. See right here.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, that's awesome. Another series that I think I saw you do was the Raptor Eye. Oh
yeah, that's a new one. So that one's been a lot of fun. So I'm absolutely obsessed with Jurassic Park dinosaurs. Like I was 13 when that movie was launched in theaters. Deeper story goes back to one of my favorite authors. Michael Crichton was actually the author for the book Jurassic Park. And I read that before I actually saw the movie at 13 years old. And when Ricky Wysocki just got to put his hand in the design on these raptor eyes, and I saw how closely it resembled the actual raptor eye from the movies and all the pictures that you see of the raptor dinosaurs. I'm like, I've got to do something with these. Like, thank God they're on premium plastic, because if they weren't, I would have been so disappointed. But thankfully they were, and the series has been a lot of fun. I just posted a really cool one today, actually. Finding them in different colors has been a challenge, though, I will say. So for the larger part of the beginning, I was only able to find them in red. So I had to kind of look overseas at a couple of sources to get some alternate colored discs in. But the dye series is going great. Ricky Wysocki actually shared one of the first ones that I did on his Facebook page. Which is funny because my following on Facebook is way smaller than my following on Instagram. And it was crazy because as soon as he shared it, my Facebook page like exploded. And I'm like, oh, come to Instagram. Like I live over here more. The stuff that's on Facebook is just copied from Instagram. So, but yeah, obviously I work both platforms, but to have somebody of his caliber recognize the work and, share it with his following of, I think he's got over 50,000 something on Facebook. And then on Instagram, I think he's like 125,000. So he has shared it in his story on Instagram a few times as well. So to know that he's in support of the series is really cool. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm still going to do more. I've got a few on the rack next to me right now that I have yet to dye, and a few more that will be here later this week to dye as well. So.
No, that's awesome. I remember first seeing that disc, I was like, boy, that looks really cool. Then I remember seeing Ricky share that. I was like, good for you.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, no, that's been cool. A lot of people were commenting on it about the resemblance to the Eye of Sauron also from like Lord of the Rings. So, which is interesting because that's actually pretty accurate depiction as well. But yeah, I definitely I'm having a good time with the series. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. So we've been talking all about this great stuff. Do you have any memorable fail stories?
There is a fail story. At least it's a fail for me. So my disc brand knowledge has grown, obviously. I mean, I've only been playing for a couple of years. Primarily my knowledge resides in the trilogy world, as far as, how discs fly, what are popular molds, that kind of stuff. Someone messaged me about doing a custom dye for him. He bought one of my harps, actually, and wanted to send me he sent me a picture of it, and I was like, I don't know what I'm looking at. It had this X on it. I didn't know what the heck that was all about. Just a white disc with an X on it. I was like, I could dye that, sure. Like, it's shiny plastic. Yeah, send it to me. Why not? So he sends it to me. I just want you to do your thing. I'm like, okay. You don't have any like color preference? No, just do your thing. I'm like, okay. So it was, and I don't know how difficult it was for him to get this, but it was an X-Out DD3 Discmania. So it's probably not terribly difficult to source if you know where to go. I don't know a whole lot about Discmania personally, so I don't shop for them unless someone asks me to find one for them specifically. But he sends me this disc. I don't want to say I experimented with it. I had done the dye pattern that I chose to do on his on a different disc before, so it wasn't like new to me. But as far as the result, I was not really impressed with how it blended with the X out, and I didn't even know you couldn't. I didn't know you couldn't wipe the X out at that point. I didn't ask him about whether he wanted it or not. Thankfully, I didn't, because I wouldn't have been able to, and I would have been baffled as to why. But yeah, it was not the greatest for me. He absolutely loved it. I tried to do kind of like the half design where you leave part of the disc white and then you have the stream of one color going across. I chose black at the time, so I had this stream line of black going across, and then I think some purples and blues kind of swirled on the other end. It was really kind of, a neat concept. I just didn't like how the X out just made it not pop as much as I would have liked. I should have left the X out on the clear undyed portion. I put it in the dye section thinking, that'll probably cover it up a little bit. It did not. So it was still very visible, which is why I was a little irritated with it. But he absolutely loved it. At least he said he did. I don't know the guy, so if you're out there, hopefully you love the X Out DD3 that I dyed still to this day, and that you haven't lost it yet.
Well, as long as as long as he's happy, or he says he's happy, that's really all that matters. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I go for. If somebody's got something they want to send me, I'm all about trying to dye it if it's a premium plastic. But if a lot of people are sending me stuff where they just say, do your thing. And I absolutely love that.
Even mean?
I don't. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's not my disc. Like, you're sending me your disc, but you want me to do my thing on your disc. Okay, that's flattering, and I appreciate that, and I love the artistic creativity. I absolutely love that piece as far as having the freedom to do what I want to do. When someone tells me that, that means that they like what I've done so far, and they trust what I'm able to do, which is great. But I want to know a little bit more about what you really are hoping to see at the same time. Like, if you're able to give me any insight,
like
it would be a huge help.
Favorite
Just like
color.
Well, can I have a color? Give me one color that you want to be on there. I will make sure it's there, and then I'll make the rest, do my thing kind of look. That's perfect. But yeah, a lot of people sending me stuff. Just do your thing. Okay. If you hate it, I'm sorry, but you told me to do my thing. Exactly.
You make your camel colors with like dark green and brown and all stuff. Oh,
yeah.
There you go.
Brown's a highly underrated color, I will say. I've had a couple of really, really good experiences with brown dye, and one of them I had to mix the brown myself to like create a brown, because I didn't have a very good brown, and I still really don't. I still kind of have to mix my own, but somebody wanted me to do the Cleveland Browns, the brownie guy, like that weird, I don't know, dwarf looking dude that wears the hat, and they have him in the middle of their field now, which is hilarious. But either way, the guy wanted that logo. Matt, I don't know if you listen to this or not, but either way, the guy bought like 5 of the harps off of me for the harp series. He lives in Northern Ohio. Great dude. But he asked for this Browns logo, and it was my first attempt at hand painting anything with dye. And I had to mask different areas at different times, because the stencil of the brownie guy was a little bit more complex than I initially thought it was going to be. So I had to work with that a little bit, and thankfully the result ended up coming out really, really, really well. I was actually really happy with it, and when he got it, he was blown away. But yeah, the brown that I ended up having to use that because it's the Cleveland Browns. Had to be brown involved. And then the other one I used brown was one of the harps, the one that I made look like actual kind of beer in the background. And then I had like these brown like flame kind of things coming in that weren't exactly meant to look like flames, but they kind of did anyway. That was one that Matt actually bought as well. So he's actually got that one hanging on his wall along with a couple of the others, which is cool. That's flattering too, when people hang your stuff up. Like, it's meant to fly, but you like it that much, that's great. Clearly I like discs too. I've got a bunch hanging up, so.
Yeah. If you need some more wall hangers, I definitely sell some.
You do? Okay. I think I'm okay for now. I'm running out of wall, though. If you've got any more wall that you want to sell.
Yeah, don't have that. That costs a little bit more money.
Yeah, it's a little full.
So do you have any tips or tricks that you'd like to give to either beginner disc dyers or the seasoned veteran out there?
Don't be afraid to just do what you think might work. Obviously, there's a ton of resources out there for you to do some educating parts ahead of experimentation. So probably do that a little bit at least. Otherwise, you might not get any dye to transfer. But I would highly encourage folks to look up some information, but don't be afraid to try something. Just because you see what someone else is doing and what their suggestion is, it doesn't mean that that's the way to do it. Like, that's the one cool thing about this art, is that it's complete freedom. You don't have any script. You just do what feels like it might work or what feels good to you, and then you get to see the result. So that would be my encouragement for new dyers. And honestly, for experienced dyers, I do have one trick that I will share, which we haven't talked about yet, spin dyes. So most or all, not all, but the majority of my discs, when I do a dye, I will add a spin dye to the bottom rim of the disc with acetone and prochemical and dye mixtures most of the time. I have discovered that using quick coat worm dip in the same or similar color that you've had a spin dye of the prochemical and dye color over top of it, it doesn't alter the color very much, if at all. Some of it doesn't alter at all. But I feel like it makes the color pop a little bit more and almost makes it so that it doesn't transfer. So obviously after you do a spin dye, you have to wash it. Okay. Oh, got to spin dye it again because I washed a bunch of it off. Got to spin dye it again. So you're redoing it, 5 and 6 and 7 times to try and get it to look the way that you want it to look. It's a bit of a corner cutter for me, where I found that I'll use, lilac or pansy from Prochemical and Dye purple colors that I can then turn around and grab my purple bottle of Quick Coat Worm Dip and go over top of both of those colors with that worm dip. Even though it's two different colors, it doesn't alter them enough to where they end up looking the same. They keep their original color that was laid down, and I don't have to wash it and redo it as many times. I've been doing that after the first try whenever I'm spinning. I've been doing that with the last, probably 10 or 12 discs that I've done. It's just something that I just decided to do. I don't know what made me decide to do it. I just said, hey, I'm going to try this and see what happens. I haven't had to wash them 5 and 6 times to get the get the transfer to not happen. It's locking in something by doing it that way. And I'm happy to share that tip with anybody who wants to try it out and try to prove me wrong. But I definitely wash it after that. So once I use the quick coat, I'll do the wash and rinse. I haven't had one come back that I've had to re-dye with another spin after doing that yet. And I say yet because it's bound to happen. And it's probably going to happen with whoever the first person is that listens to this and tries it. And then they're going to message me and be like, dude, you said this was going to work. I promise you it works. It's just, I haven't had to redo it yet. But yeah, I feel like it's an interesting little discovery that I just happened upon. I was trying to experiment with gradient spins because I haven't done a whole lot of that yet. And I learned that acetone-based gradient isn't really as forgiving. So I have some denatured alcohol to try. I haven't opened it yet, but I have Quick Coat Worm Dip, which is not acetone-based. At least it's not a high concentration. So it's a much lower concentration, so I figured it might be a little more forgiving to try some gradients with, which is what led me into my accidental discovery of it like randomly sealed what was already there with the Prochem. I'm like, that's different. Okay. So I've been doing it every time with different colors just to try to make it do something different. And it keeps doing the same thing where it's just locking it in. I'm like, okay, so I'm just going to keep doing it that way.
That is very fascinating, and I'm going to have to try that. I also believe they make a clear worm dip. Have you ever tried that?
Yes, I have some clear. And I actually will say I haven't tried using clear over any of the other colors yet, other than using the little pointy tipped Q-tips to dip into the clear and use it as a correction tool. So the clear for me has worked as an eraser on a couple of things. So when I've done like some hot dips, for instance, where the stencil may have had a little bit of a bleed, the vinyl, wasn't heated down enough, whatever, with the hairdryer when I did that part, I'll use the clear quick coat worm dip to like clean that up. And if it's not abrasive enough to get that part cleaned up, then I'll go straight acetone if I need to. But that has been more of a corrective tool as opposed to a reinforcement tool like the other colors have been. So keep that in mind. If you try the clear and it works for you, though, you gotta let me know, because I'd be interested to know that as well.
Yeah. So I'm gonna keep plugging this. Do you have Dave's Spin Dye Jig Rig?
Dude, yes. I swear. So yes, I looked.
Awesome.
I looked them up online. So when I got my turntable, the centerpiece clearly doesn't allow you to flip a disc upside down on it without making your disc lay all wobber jawed. So I invested in these like what you would normally use for a actual record that you're trying to play, with a cork pad to keep the record from spinning, on the surface if it's not a good surface. They have those cork pads that you can get. So I bought a 3-pack of those off Amazon for like $10. And I just had this like stack of cork pads on my turntable to alleviate the stupid thing in the middle of it. And that worked. I mean, it was fine, but the disc still spun around. I'm like, it's like not working as well as it could. So I literally looked online to try and find a tool of some kind to make sense of what I was trying to find out. I looked, I drilled out a suction cup. I kid you not. I drilled out a little suction cup and stuck it on the center of that thing and thought maybe if I stick the disc down on it, it'll hold it still and then it'll spin. That didn't work either. So we can add that to my fail reel. But yeah, it was the first thing that came up was your jig when I searched for them online. So I was like, okay, well, it doesn't have hardly any reviews because I think you had just started making them at that point. Like it had to have been very early. But you sent me like a couple of wall hangers, a thank you note, a couple of stickers. And I was like, oh, cool. Dave, thanks, Dave. Like, this is cool. I don't really know you or anything, but this is really cool. Because I think that was like one of the first moments that I was introduced to your site and your, tie it to disc golf as a whole was when I discovered you had that jig. But yeah, I've had it for, oh my gosh, I want to say not quite a year, but almost. I don't know how long you've been making them, but it would have had to have been shortly after you started making them that I got it.
Yeah, I think it was earlier this year, like February or March.
Yeah, I think I got it in the spring.
I think you have the ones that, because now I've been recently adding small felt pads to them, which I find helpful. So I can either send you another one or some felt pads if you want.
I'll tell you what, if there's a way for you to include it in dyes, somebody's buying discs from you to dye and you want to just give somebody one that you would have given me since I already bought one from you, let's do it that way.
Well, if you buy some Harp discs, I'll just throw that in there.
Well, there you go. I'll probably buy the Harp disc from you.
Well, that's awesome.
But yeah, it's a great tool, man. You did a great job putting it together. I don't know how 3D printing works, but it worked well.
Magic.
Yeah, it looks magic.
Yes. That's awesome. So back on topic. If you had to start disc dyeing today, knowing what you know now, is there anything that you would do differently?
To be honest, there really isn't. I think in order for me to get to the level that I am now, which I still feel like there's definitely things that everybody wants to look to do better at. Dyeing is no different for me. I still want to continue to do great things in the dye community, and I feel like I would do it all the same. I feel like I had to learn by trying these different mediums and these different methods to see what results were going to look like to figure out if that was going to be the way that I wanted to pursue my art. And it could have happened differently. I could have fell in love with shaving cream beds and, sprinkled dye poly on top of them and made, a mound and spin it around on my turntable and smash the disc down. Like I've seen so many really neat results from. It's a really cool result that comes from that. But that wasn't, meant for me. It was meant for me to do something different. And the glue beds, thanks to my wife suggesting that, despite my not wanting to clean it up, that was definitely the turning point for me. So yeah, I wouldn't change a thing, man. I love the journey that I've been on. It's been a lot of fun, learning along the way, and I'm still learning every day.
Yes, that's awesome. That's awesome that your wife is also encouraging of your little hobby.
Yeah, she's great.
Does she play at all?
She's gone out and tried to play one time. It did not go well. So her and I are both actually soccer players. We both played soccer for 10 plus years. Her hand-eye coordination does not translate well to disc golf. So unfortunately, she experimented with it on one hole while we were out on a short 9-hole course. That's not too far from us. It's one of my favorite courses in the area, but she did not do well on her first throw and decided that she should not throw more. I did not argue with her because I feel like that was the right decision.
Already then. All right. Well, she can be there for moral support then.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So we are going to get to know Justin on a personal level. So the next segment that we have is the favorite fave. So what is your favorite band or song?
I feel like this is like an impossible question to answer. Specifically for me, I was a DJ for 25 years. So
yeah, I guess you do have an excuse because
it's difficult. It's really difficult. I mean, the amount of music that I've been exposed to over that course of time with different events that I had to DJ at the all Christian music wedding and all different ethnicity, background music wedding. One of them I did was all Latin music, which I personally had little to no familiarity with, obviously, at the time. But I quickly became familiar with it because that's what they wanted played. So if I had to pick, I would say I'm going to go total curveball. I'm going to say like Frank Sinatra, crooner type music. I really get down on that. I like to think I have an old soul when it comes to some of the original when sound was really becoming a bit more amplified with some of the limitations they had so many years ago with some of the production equipment and things of that nature. Just to hear the natural tone in some of those guys' voices back then. Dean Martin's another great one. Elvis, even though his music came to light a lot later in life than Frank Sinatra's did, but I feel like all those guys, their voices, they just hit a different way because of the time that it's from. So I would go that route. That's going to be where I'm going to land. I'm going to land in the crooner area.
That is a great answer and a great reasoning why that I never thought about. So that's awesome. Yeah. I was assuming you're going to say the chicken dance, but no.
Oh, gosh. Please, no. That and the Hokey Pokey were like two of my least favorite things ever to play. And when I started DJing, I was 15, and it was at my local skating rink. And anytime there was a birthday party at the skating rink, they always had to do the Hokey Pokey and the chicken dance. So for my younger years of DJing, those two things became an absolute item of despise in my life for songs.
What got you into DJing?
I kind of grew up just listening to a lot of different music. My stepdad was into music. He was in a band and actually ended up a friend of his through work started his own DJ business. And since my stepdad was a singer in a band, Wasn't afraid of a microphone. Guy that he worked with was interested in getting a couple of guys to help him with the DJ business, so he started doing it. And I think I was probably about 12 or 13 when he started to have me kind of help him load his equipment. And then it wasn't long after that. I liked going to the shows with him when he would DJ at like school dances. So like proms and middle school dances and stuff like that. So I liked going to those just because some of them were at schools that I knew kids at. So it was like I got to be cool because I was on stage with the DJ and they're my friends are out there. And I'm like, oh, you can't come up here. Sorry. So that was kind of neat. But at the same time, he would have me hook up and unhook all of the equipment to like learn how to do it. Mm-hmm. And with him doing that and then landing what I called my dream job as a teenager, working at the skating rink as a DJ. Me and my brother used to go to the skating rink all the time as kids. Growing up, that was like our weekend thing every weekend. So to get a job there was really cool. And that's kind of where it all started. I just, I really enjoyed what I was doing there. And after I turned 18, the guy that started the DJ business with my stepdad hired me on as one of his guys. And I worked for him and for my stepdad for, I don't know, probably 6 or 8 years. And then I branched off and started my own company doing it my way because I wanted to do it as frequently or infrequently as I wanted to do it. There were weekends where I would have much rather been doing something in my personal life as opposed to DJing someone's wedding at that time in my life. So when I finally branched off and did my own thing, it was really nice because I had full freedom to just say no. Like if someone said, oh, hey, I need you to DJ my wedding. We're doing it the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And I could be like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm not available because that's the game. I can't DJ your wedding because Ohio State plays that team up north every Saturday after Thanksgiving now. So
yeah. So I did wedding photography, and DJing is the same vein. Is it basically takes up a weekend, which kind of sucks sometimes.
It does, yeah. And it's not like, so like they'll hire you for your 4-hour wedding reception or whatever, half-hour ceremony and 4-hour reception, 6-hour reception, whatever it is. So you're only getting hired for that 6 or whatever hour period. But the amount of time it takes to get there ahead of time, if it's a venue you have to drive 45 minutes to an hour to get to, and then set up your equipment for an hour, hour and a half, depending on if you're setting up, dance lighting and all these extra things that I had available. It ends up being a full, 12-hour day by the time you're all said and done, leaving the house and getting back home. So finally just decided that was it. I DJ'd my last wedding 2 months ago. Yeah, it was October this year. And it was a great show. I just, I'm glad to not need to worry about it anymore. I just hung it up and move on to dyeing discs at my leisure.
Yes. At least hopefully some of the weddings actually fed you, because I've had instances where they forget you.
I got forgotten more than I got fed, unfortunately. Yeah. That was the case a lot. And sometimes the food wasn't really that great, so I wasn't really too upset. But yeah, I definitely got forgotten about more so than I got fed. But that's okay. Yeah.
So speaking of food, what is your favorite food?
Favorite food. It's crazy. I knew all of these questions were coming, and they're not going to be easy for me to answer. So I'm a foodie, man. I like food in general. The only food I really don't like is like tomatoes. I don't like tomatoes. I don't like cucumbers either. But like food in general, I'll try anything. Like I'm not going to be afraid to try something new when it comes to food. If I had to pick like a favorite cuisine, I'll go with a favorite cuisine. I won't say food. Okay. I'd probably go Italian, to be honest. There's just a ton of options with Italian, because that includes pizza too. So like that opens that whole window. But yeah, so gnocchi, it's like a really weird potato-based pasta. It's absolutely fantastic. There's a place locally not far from me. Here it's about 15 minutes away, and they have this gnocchi and Alfredo sauce. It's mind-blowingly good. It's awesome. So if you're not familiar with gnocchi pasta and you have a place nearby that's not some like fancy chain restaurant that literally is making the stuff by hand, doing it the right way, give it a shot. You won't be mad.
So what is your favorite beverage?
So I have a beverage fridge, separate from my regular refrigerator that houses, I don't know, I think there's probably about 20 or so different craft beers in there right now.
Oh, wow.
So I like craft beer, all the microbreweries. The brewery scene, beer scene in Cincinnati is mind-blowingly large. There's like 100 plus microbreweries just in the greater Cincinnati area, which stems back to a long history of beer when the Germans settled here, a couple hundred years ago and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've done like beer tours, different things to learn a little bit about the history of beer in Cincinnati since we've lived here. And that has expanded my interest in different variations. So stouts, I like stouts, coffee stouts in particular. I also love coffee. I cannot have a day where I don't have coffee. That's if I have to pick a beverage that I'm going to choose as my beverage, it's going to be coffee. I have to have that. I can do without beer. I need coffee.
Yeah, it's the caffeine addiction. Well, I don't know if you have Wisconsin beat for beer and or drunkenness, but if you ever come to Wisconsin, there's a lot of good beer choices and selections.
I have been here. I've been to Wisconsin a couple of times. I don't know how close you are to Green Bay. I know you're in Wisconsin, so
yes.
I just don't know what distance or time.
20 minutes west of Milwaukee.
It's where you are.
Yes.
Okay, so for you to go to Green Bay, it's
2.5 hours, depending.
Okay, it's like, I don't know, a long time for me. It's like I don't even remember how long it took. I think it was like 10 hours or something. It was crazy. But my wife's a huge Green Bay Packers fan, so we drove up there for training camp several years ago. We got to experience the Titletown Brewery. Amazing beer, amazing cheese curds. I'm very familiar with Wisconsin cheese and it being like the staple of the state. I don't think you guys have a state bird. I think it's just cheese for everything. So the experience we had there was fantastic. Though we ate at Lambeau Field. We ate. They had a fancy restaurant up on one of the upper levels, the club level. I think they had a restaurant that we were able to eat at. But yeah, food was fantastic. Beer was great. So yeah, I'm familiar. I'm not going to say that we won't venture back up there at some point because I would love to take my wife to an actual game at Lambeau as a thank you for being awesome, being my wife for 11 years kind of thing. Because
awesome. That's
like her dream thing, bucket list thing is to go see a game at Lambeau. So we were there for training camp. So it obviously was before the season started. So, but yeah, taking her back up there at some point for a game would be ideal. And if we're back up there, I know you say you're 2 hours or so away. We might have to like meet in the middle if there's a course or something we could potentially hit up.
Yeah, I mean,
up there.
If you're gonna drive up there, you basically drive right past me.
Then see, it's all aligning. It's all
right. It's set. So you're like on your wedding anniversary or whatever. It's like, let's go play disc golf.
Yeah. Well, my wedding anniversary is in 4 days.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, we have a Christmas wedding. It's December 10th. So yeah, I don't know if I'm supposed to like give away your date of recording secrets or anything, but either way, that's coming up. 11 years of marriage. So
well, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. So the next topic that we have is if you had to pick 3 discs to use for the rest of your life to play any course, what would those 3 discs be?
So I do favor Trilogy. Most of my bag is Trilogy. I do have a couple of other molds thrown in there for situational, throws as they come along. But I would say I will not be able to go without my Fusion Dynamax Judge, which I can actually show you because it is right here. This would be a staple in my bag. That actually says my name on it. My wife had that made for me as a Christmas gift. Nice. And I dyed it, of course, with the UNC Tar Heel logo at the top there. And the Argyle. I added that too. Nifty. So that's going with me for sure. That'll be my putter. And mid-range is going to be an EMAC Truth. I have one that I bag from Dyenamic Dyes. I did like a honeycomb on it, and it's got like the Dyenamic bumblebee stamp on it, so it's pretty cool. But yeah, I'll bag that as my mid. And then I would say for a driver, this is where it's going to be tough. I'm going to go with my VIP Chameleon Stag. That thing it's such a versatile disc, and I've learned that it can be used in so many different variations just by trying to throw it different ways and see what it does. And it's getting to be like my go-to driver. Like, I don't want to bag any other driver, so I definitely feel like I need to bring that one.
Next section, the perfect hole. What has been your favoriteest course and or hole that you've played so far?
So far, there's a course that's about a 35 minute drive from where I'm at, just outside of Cincinnati, in a local, very large, like, nature park. It's called Stone Lick. Absolutely gorgeous course. By far the prettiest course that I've played on. It's on a huge lake. There's like 5 holes that are right along the shoreline that add the element of difficulty that exists with some major OB. And then hole 10 is what we'll refer to as, it's more of a peninsula hole, but it is literally an island green. So you have to throw 200 feet over water to get it to the basket from the tee. And I've not managed to do it every time. We'll just say that it has a couple of my discs in its grasp from failed attempts at getting across the 200 feet, but it's still such a cool hole. It's just like, I'd throw it 10 times if I could stand there and just throw it a few times just to see how many I could get over. If I just had like an unlimited supply of discs to try, it'd be great. But yeah, and it's 200 feet over the water from the shorts. So like from the long tee, I mean, that part's obviously not water because it's just further behind the tee, but it's still, you got to get it like 240 or so to get over the water from that. So, but yeah, that's a fun hole. Stone Lick, if you're ever in the Cincinnati area, that's one of the courses you should definitely hit up.
Do you have any courses on your bucket list?
I do. So thankfully, my one that's at the top is going to be checked off in May. I'll be going to Emporia in May to play the country club, which is just one of those. Obviously, I haven't followed disc golf for a couple of years, but it's just one of those courses that's it's very memorable. There's clearly a lot of tournament activity that goes on there. There's just been a lot of interesting things that have happened with some pretty spectacular shots over some different things that I've watched on YouTube over the years. So I would say that's an item I'm going to get to check off my bucket list. I'm going to go spend 4 days with my buddy up there. We're going to stay. They have an Airbnb on the country club course that the CEO of Dynamic Discs owns. So it's all like themed around Dynamic Discs, which is really freaking cool. So we're going to stay in the Airbnb while we're there and get to check off that course off my bucket list. And then obviously all the other ones that are around there too, like Peter Pan, that's another cool one. And I've got some contacts at Dynamic Discs that I've been messaging about like things I need to check out while I'm in Emporia in general. But those are 2 courses that were highly recommended by my contacts there. And then the country club was already on my list, but Peter Pan was added after I was told that I need to check that one out too. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that does sound like a lot of fun, and the Airbnb sounds like it's going to be a hoot as well.
It might be. I don't know how much time we're going to actually spend there other than to sleep, to be honest. I told my friend, it's Travis with Birdie Bud Dyes is going with me. I told him, I was like, I I don't know about you, but I want to just go throw till my arm falls off. Like there's going to be so much that we want to do course wise. And there's a ton of really cool courses around there other than just what's right there on Country Club, in that vicinity right away. So we'll have a rental car so we can, drive around. We're going to use our disc golf bags as our carry-on with our discs in them when we fly out there. So, but yeah, it's going to be a good time. I'm looking forward to it. It's definitely pretty cool to get to go out there, and we'll get to do a tour of the facility too, which is kind of neat. So
awesome.
Get to check things out.
Kind of jealous, not gonna lie.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't I didn't know anything about it. It was literally a surprise anniversary gift for my wife. So
awesome.
Yeah, pretty awesome.
Dream date. If you had to pick one pro player to play around with and hang out with, who would it be?
So I actually had a hard time with this one because there's a couple that I think just from the interaction that I've had with a couple of pros online, there are 3 pros that are bagging discs that I dyed for them right now. 3 Harps actually from the Harp series because there were 3 pros that just thought they were super cool and they already bagged Harps. So they asked me to put some together for them. But honestly, if I had to pick a pro, there's no way in hell he's listening to this, but I would say Zach Melton, and that might seem like a curveball, but he was literally the first pro to reach out to me with a reaction when I put the first Harp Dye Series discs out. When he saw the first couple of those that I released, he commented, it was like some eye open emojis or something. It was just like a goofy little emoji type comment, so it wasn't like super crazy or anything, but I shot him a message afterwards. I was like, dude, if you want one, let me know. I got you. It'd be really cool. It'd be an honor to dye one up for you. And it took him a few days, but he actually messaged me back. So we've actually been in pretty regular contact where we'll message each other about different things over the last, I think I've been doing that series for, 8-9 months now at least. And so we've been messaging back and forth about that. I would totally love to throw around with him. Told him that I'm coming to Emporia in May. I know he's going to be potentially passing through that area. I think they're going to be out west as far as the tour is concerned at that time. But I told him if there's any chance he's in the area when I get out there, I'd love to throw around with him. And he actually got me into pickleball as well. And that's the other thing. I would love to throw around with him and then go play pickleball with him afterwards because it's just he just seems like such a cool dude. He's really laid back. I feel like our energy would just vibe really well. He's a really cool dude in the disc golf community. I feel like a lot of other pros like him. A lot of fans like him as well. So he'd definitely be my pick. So Zach, if you're listening, we'll get around in sometime, man.
All right, Justin. So where can people find your amazing work?
So I have Instagram at Dyenamic Dyes. Facebook is the same at Dyenamic Dyes. There's no spaces, underscores, or dots of any kind. It's just straight Dyenamic Dyes, DYENAMIC DYES. And then also I have a page on discdyn.com. So it's all linked in my bio for the social media sites. You can find me on discdyn.com too. If you just go to their artist section and search for me, you can find me there. But that's where I put all the stuff that I'm selling. So
definitely go check out his work. I know you'll be impressed, and buy one of his discs if you want. And speaking of discs to buy, he will be also raffling one of his discs off, to be determined yet. But when this podcast gets released, is when the raffle will go live. So the raffle will be live for 2 weeks, and it's only $1 for an entry to win. So you have a chance to win his awesome dye for $1. It's less than a cup of coffee or a lot of things nowadays. So why wouldn't you? And 100% of the proceeds go back to Justin. So it's going to help him continue his disc dyeing journey. So if you want to support him and get an awesome disc, head to dyersguild.co and look for that, and there'll be links somewhere. So definitely go check that out. But that's all we have for today. So Justin, I greatly appreciate you being on. Learned a lot of new things today, so that's awesome. So thanks again.
Yeah,
and
sure.
We'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate you.
Yep.
Man.